So I'm Jerome Lewis. I'd like to thank all the people who've been key in organising this wonderful event. I'd like to thank all those who've supported making it possible. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming. And we're really lucky today. We're lucky because we have such wonderful, inspirational people to learn from. And we're also lucky in another way. And that's really what I want to just share with you a little bit in order to try and communicate something of what the idea and principle of flourishing is. And really, what is extraordinary about the luck that we have is that in order for us all to be here sharing this time together tonight, there had to be an unbroken chain of being that began 3.7 billion years ago in the first life that emerged on this extraordinary planet that we inhabit. And that life has continued down millions of generations through all sorts of forms, from the first bacteria to slowly becoming more and more complex beings. And they've endured incredible challenges and somehow managed to persist until they came to be us. Each of us is a direct lineage to those very first bacteria. We are that unbroken chain of being, and that is an extraordinary luck. And it's a luck to really, I think, hold dear in our hearts, because it helps bring purpose and understanding of our place here and our responsibilities too that come with that very great privilege to be present, to be sharing tonight. And the key way that life has made sure that that process, that extraordinary chain of connection has been possible is through its relentless production and creation of diversity. And indeed, that diversity, that constant drive to make things different, to create variation, is what has resulted in the process of evolution. It's extraordinary. It's a great mystery why life does this, but life does it, and it's extraordinarily successful. And there was an astrophysicist who tried to calculate the chances of us being here today, and he said that in the grand scheme of things, it's like winning the national lottery 10 times in a row. Bang, 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 bang. It's really quite extraordinary that we are here. And that our beautiful sun, earth, moon system has been stable enough for that period of time to maintain that constant production of diversity, that flourishing of diversity. So in a very profound sense, we are all kin, not just with each other, but with everything that exists on this planet. We are all part of the same stardust that emerged in those explosions of suns, stars around the universe that have produced the elements which we are all made. In fact, everything that we can see around us is made from. And why life does this? Why does life push for diversity, constantly pushing for diversity? It's because we can never know the future. And when you don't know what will happen, the best way of assuring that something will persist is by making sure that there's a huge variety of different forms, of different places, of different ecosystems, of different beings, all collaborating together in this very extraordinary thing that we experience as life on Earth. And that diversity means that something will endure whatever happens. And of course, we can think of some of the previous forms of life that have inhabited this planet, for instance, the dinosaurs, because their body shapes are of so many various kinds, because some of them lived to grow wings and fly. And so that when this extraordinary meteor, bang, hit the Earth, nothing could have prepared the dinosaurs for that. But some of them could fly. And so there are bird kin today. And thank you so much for bringing their presence into this room with that beautiful singing. But today, the world is dominated by a new economic system which values profit over life, which has colonized landscapes across the world in an effort to produce products which will be consumed to create profit, mostly in urban centers like London. And that has had a devastating impact because it produces monocultures of places, plantation economies that will supply the maximum number of goods that can be then traded in other places. And this is creating a crisis, a profound crisis. The great diversity of life, of all the different organisms that collaborate to create each ecosystem that exists on this beautiful planet are being challenged in very profound ways. And it's that challenge which we are now facing the consequences of. And so I'd like to share some of the ways that we might think about that. The monocultures aren't simply monocultures of places. Unfortunately, they're also monocultures of people. And I work in a university, so I'm also responsible for this. But the production of the same sorts of minds, the same sorts of people with the same desires for the good life, this good life which is all about shimmering, shiny objects, about how the self is presented to others. And in those schools where we put our children, they're taught to compete with one another. And in that process, they're taught to become more consumers, to join the workforce, to gain more things so that they can also amass more than their neighbors in the way that exams and so on produce competition as a basis for life. For living. And the trouble is that the consumption that goes on is done without any concern for those multi-species relations on which a flourishing planet depends, and without those numerous interrelated relationships between different beings, that life will be and is tragically constrained and challenged. And what we're seeing at the moment is extinction rates rising to levels that in the geological past we've only experienced at times of major cataclysms, of major catastrophes. And this is, of course, extremely concerning. But the big difference between the extinction crisis that we're in now is that this one is not produced by a meteor suddenly coming out of nowhere and hitting the Earth. It's produced by our behavior, by our ethical choices. And that is actually our great hope, because we can change our behavior. We don't have to continue along this path. And so, at the international level, we're seeing an extraordinary inadequacy of responses to this extremely significant and worrying crisis. The way that governments are presenting this is as a technical solution that experts need to produce, but actually we're not coming to any serious solutions at all in these big discussions that are happening at the international level. They've been going on for 30-odd years, and they're still inadequate to the challenges that we face. And that's why what our guests will share with us tonight is so important. It's really the point of this evening, in fact, is to connect us with the struggles and the successes that they, in their different ways, in their different places, have achieved over this, in face of this relentless colonization that's happening through this economic system. And what we need to do through those connections is start to collaborate much more to support life. And by understanding the principle, this principle of flourishing diversity, we can start to realign ourselves. Instead of being part of the problem, of part of the consumption that's destroying life, we can start to align ourselves with life, to become part of the solution. And there's no template on how to do this, and there should never be. Rather, it's an invitation to each of us to think very consciously about what our individual gifts, and each of us has profound, beautiful gifts, to recognize those gifts, and then to take the courage to really put them in service to life, to not simply be shy, but to be brave, and to stand up for life, to support life in any way that we can. And each of us has a small area where we have influence. Maybe it's a big area, maybe it's a small area. It doesn't matter. As Christabel was saying, whether it's the balcony of your council flat or a 60-acre farm, that is your space. What can you do to start to align with that principle? What can you do in that space? The joy that we're primed to get from watching things grow, from watching places transform to become diverse and to become beautiful. And this is really an invitation to all of us to step up for life. And we need imagination in order to do that. We need to really think carefully, build our vision of what that future is and hold on to that vision and live with it every day and see how we can make it start to flourish in those spaces that we have influence over. And if enough of us do this, even in the small spaces we occupy, we don't need to wait for governments. We can already start to create that solution, to become ecological citizens, flourishers, producing the diversity, supporting the diversity to continue on into the future. And here we're going to hear from our guests of different ways that in their circumstances they have taken charge and started to become supporters of life in those spaces and defenders of life against the aggressions of that colonizing system, to resist the forces killing life. And they've been taking actions in many different ways, and we're very lucky to be here tonight to be able to hear and be inspired by their efforts and their experiences. So it's an invitation tonight for you to step up to become ecological citizens, to become flourishers, to become supporters of life, and to join them in becoming part of the solution rather than continuing to be part of the problem. Thank you.